After lying all around all morning, resting, which clearly my whole being needed to do so much, after weeks of travelling and work, I'm now on my way to the river.
Is this a towel? Towel?
I have towel, yes I have, thank you. Just need to go outside. My chef is showing me the way. So we cross the road. That way is the bridge towards the village. But we are going in here. This appears to be a continuation of the floating palace, but it is being built. And yes, this is where we're going. As the gate swings open, this is my first water experience in Sri Lanka. I'm ready for it, so ready for it. Okay, I've just emerged from one of the most gorgeous water experiences in my life, there's no question about it. Water experiences for me are usually a brief phenomenon. Get in, have the experience, feel the blood pressure drop, followed by the blood pressure rise due to the extreme difference in temperature from outside in the air and in the water, and then within a couple of minutes at the most out. I could happily spend the entire afternoon in here, no question about it. In fact, I was encouraged by the gorgeousness of this water to just be in it and to sing and to chant, including the Yahweh chant, which I do on the Nature's Medicine retreats. This is a totally extraordinary location, and I would be very happy to bring Nature's Medicine retreat participants to either this exact location or something very similar, because after a morning of feeling incredible lassitude, my energy is picked up and I feel raring to go. Really looking forward to my lunch, which chef is going to be cooking for me in due course. Now, I need to draw your attention to these plants, because these leaves look exactly the same as the leaves in the Edo plants I'm growing in my back garden at the moment. And that's just an interesting coincidence. So here we are at Floating Palace Hotel, and I'm very grateful to be here, there's no question about it. It is funny, before my water experience I was really feeling pretty much half dead, and that was despite having had a shower early this morning, which did nothing to revive me whatsoever. But coming out of the water, rubbing myself down, stimulating my lymphatic system, and then starting to eat this food, I feel full of life again. Such an interesting time I'm having out here. I'm just learning so much constantly. And it's the afternoon after my water experience, and the storm has sprung up, as I'm perfectly sure you can hear. I'm going to take a little walk around the place where I'm staying. And the intensity of the storm is easing off a bit, as you can hear. So this is Floating Palace Hotel on a rainy Monday afternoon. And that's my way in and out. This coconut string that's been used to cover the post there. So what's happening now is I'm just going to show you the main area of the hotel, and the first thing that will strike you as you look around is, like, where are the people? Well, yeah, exactly, I am actually the only guest there, and for almost the entire time I was. Now if we just zoom in on here, we can see the most unusual kind of decor that the people have installed in here to create the flavour that they want, which represents this, which is their business. And I want you to know that I was there just before the beginning of the season. The season really begins in August, and I was there mid-July. And this is very much the part of the hotel that they want to impress you with, which is just outside of the main building, which we're going to get to have a look at shortly. And here's the main entrance, and now here's one of the hotel employees who's going to show me around inside. So one of the reasons I want you to see this is because if I was to host retreats at this venue, this would be the place that I would use. It's a really substantial sized building. One thing I like about it is it's not exactly square. It's got some, you can see, corners cut off it to give it an interesting geometric shape. The floor, as you can see, is polished marble or some kind of stone, and it's done up in, I would say, the traditional old Sri Lankan style. And they've really gone to some expense and trouble here to put this spiral staircase in, which leads us up to the floor above. So the way that I see it is that this space would be big enough quite easily to have up to 16 people in ceremony. And what I'm doing now is I'm just revealing to you one of the major facets of this location, which is in its favour, which is that apart from the main venue we've just had a look inside, there are so many other places to be. So this is a space which is kind of inside, but it also opens out onto a veranda. And you can see the use of wood in terms of these rather beautiful sculptures and decor pieces, and you've got the utterly clashing leopard skin of the seats up there, which I just love. And this is what very skillful use has been made of all these covered spaces. See how that's the river I've been swimming in this morning. Only a very short shower, but look at that. Whilst I was on my swim, I was being watched by people on the bridge. Beautiful. People really like to watch you here. Sorry? Something you get used to very quickly indeed. So this kind hotel employee who's been showing me around is one of my most avid fans, in as much as he does stand up and watch me throughout the entire eating of my breakfast, lunch or dinner. It seems that I'm utterly fascinating to him, performing such a mundane task. And this really allows me the opportunity to speak about the culture and how people are out there, because they're very interested in people. If you're English, that makes you a lot more interesting still. And there's just this great desire to observe. And now having a look outside, and you can see yet more of these areas. There are just so many more areas where people can sit. So if you're on a retreat here, when you want to go and grab a bit of time with someone, there's such a choice of place you could actually go and sit and have a little chat. Moving around, that's one of the great advantages about this place. There's lots and lots of locations where you can just sit and be completely protected from no matter how heavy the rain is, or no matter how fiercely strong the sun is. And already this is one of my favourite seating spots. See the flashing Buddha over there? So I'm now going to go back to my room. So here's the shrine.
Madiyam mahara tavamat hetali gilenawa hinen hari kaluvari yalisoye mata mage novana Magin adarayak tibuna Magin adarayak tibuna.
So I'm off to the local village. See up there getting a local SIM for this phone. I guess the problem I'm having now is that it's just so very difficult to stop filming. There's just so much I want to show you. Hello. And that's my first shot of one of the cows here, and straight away having a look, recognising my existence, and then back to the food. So it really was a very short walk to village, because here is the first of the shops. What I like about this village is the size. It's such an easy village to get around in and to get to meet people, and it's got a relaxed atmosphere, and the general pressure of the road traffic, the pollution, the noise is so much less than you get in any town, so that's a real gift. That trade centre was a great place. He sorted my phone out perfectly, giving me a local SIM. And just to show you the traditionality of the shops, these are the kind of shops where you have to stand and ask for things, you don't go and help yourself, like it used to be in England a very long time ago. And I did become fascinated by the flora in this part of the world. It's totally to be expected with tropical climate. There's so many species of plants that thrive abundantly, and there's no such thing as an off-season. Everything just keeps growing all the year round. That's actually the datura plant, red bamboo and red palm. And that particular shape is such a common theme. A very rare piece of grass. Don't often see grass out there growing. But there's something about the quality of the energy of the plants. The yellow bamboo looks very spectacular. And they're this shape, this heart-shaped leaf, such a common theme, and that's tea growing. And this is sea level, so you get tea at all altitudes in Sri Lanka, it seems. So watching this rice growing in the field gave me an inspiration, which is that on retreats out here, rather than growing our own wheatgrass, it could even be possible to harvest and to juice our own rice grass. I'm very curious about the nutritional value of it. And then the next shot there, they are the passion fruit growing, which I had that amazing cocktail from earlier on in my stay. Now this advert fascinated me because it's 60,000 rupees for an undisclosed parcel of land, and after having briefly done my maths, that's literally less than £300. So I don't know what kind of land you get for that size, but it's just interesting to notice.
Hello.
Hello! Nice music! Nice music! Hey! Nice music! So this is my shots of the first accommodation in the countryside. Just love the contrasting colours of these plants by the wall. So although it reads as floating palace, it's called floating place. And here we are. So this is my final morning at Floating Palace, and it was time for me to get my things together and await Shareth's arrival together with the driver Deepal, and just take a little look outside. Something to say, this was a gated place. There was a gate that was closed every night, so it was very much a feeling of, yeah, you're kind of shut in here, and you can imagine it's possibly just for your own protection, but a kind of slightly strange feeling. And some with an umbrella, just as useful in the strong sun as in the strong rain that we get here. And a thank you and a goodbye to Gamini and Ravidu. Ravidu is my chef, and Gamini asked for my phone details, which I gave him, and I did indeed give him a text a few days later, and he never replied, but he seemed to be so happy to have my phone number. So here we are on our drive, and you can see it's pretty wet out there, and we did indeed stop for basic necessities, and here was one opportunity to have something to eat at our equivalent of a motorway services station. And it's nothing like anything you'd ever see in England, as you'd probably expect by this stage. The food was all laid out in buffet style, so you literally help yourself to whatever you wanted. I was eating with chopstick, everybody else was eating with their hands, which is something that's quite unusual to get your head around. Perhaps it just shows my conditioning about not eating with the hands, I don't know. And here we are back on the road again. So let me take this opportunity to speak a little bit more about what's going on. So I have Shareth sitting in his shotgun, and he's my guide. I've got Deepal, my driver, who's driving us, and I'm sitting in the back. And what we're doing is we're climbing very steadily up and up the mountain, and the drive consists almost entirely of hairpin bends in each direction. There are some coconuts which have sprouted. You notice the children in white were children leaving school wearing their school uniforms, and we had to stop a lot closer to our destination at this point, and we really are pretty high up. But what I didn't realise at the time, we had to drive considerably higher to get to our destination, but it's certainly high up enough to get a really good sense of the magnificence of the view and just a sense of the vegetation. This is a country which is teeming with plants. It's exactly the opposite of what you might see in North Africa. And just to show you how heavy the rain was, people having to keep their produce covered over with plastic sheeting. And so a warm welcome to Chill Cafe. And This is the defining place in the town of Ella. It's the most popular venue. It has widescreen TVs showing images of animals. It's got chefs in their lovely tall hats. And the place was very, very busy indeed. And the food quality, frankly, was not very good, but it had so many other advantages. It was the place to meet and greet, the place to get to know people, and the place to conduct all sorts of interesting business transactions. And listening to Chareth, what became very apparent quickly is that Ella is a place that the tourists come and spend a short amount of time when they leave after a few days because there's not sufficient to interest them there. And yet you've got a really powerful nexus of very, very many thousands of people from all over the world passing through who would like something else to do. So the advantage of having a retreat centre in Ella as opposed to anywhere else in Sri Lanka is there's already a captive market that would be most keen on any facilities that were put forward to them in the future.
Well, good morning. And here is a completely different landscape and soundscape for you. We're very high up in the hills at a place called Ella, which has become a major tourist nexus or focal point for people passing through on their way to other places. It's without doubt the most expensive place I've been in so far. I have very mixed feelings about being here at all. Here's one of the special features you can see. In the centre of the picture there is clouds, so we are really quite high above cloud levels. In the background there is chanting. In the foreground there's a generator and the birds. So one of the main attractions of this place, Ella, apart from its obviously utterly phenomenal view, is the temperature. As if somebody said, okay, let's just dial it down a notch for the Westerners. We know down well on the coast you find it's absolutely extraordinarily hot. And most of you really can't cope with that, so let's give you like the totally ideal temperature so that you could step out of your hotel room at 5:30 in the morning and not even need to put a t-shirt on. But on the other hand, not feeling like, oh my goodness me, I'm going to keel over because it's so hot, which is probably the experience a lot of people have in many parts of the world where it is so close to the equator. So yeah, that's some of the thoughts I have in my mind about why this place is so popular. Shazia used one word to describe this place, and the word that she used in a recent WhatsApp message to me is harshness. And I feel like I'm in the process of grasping what she means, but I haven't fully got there yet, if that makes any sense at all. One huge advantage is a railway station just a short distance away. It's always very handy.
So it's a morning after our arrival last night, quite late, And we've been taken out here to have a look at a piece of land for sale to see whether it be suitable to buy to host retreats on. And our very first step was a bit of a warning to me, because this path is incredibly difficult to walk along, unsuitable for anything in the way of a motorised vehicle except for a motorbike or a tuk-tuk. So if we were going to make use of this land, that's first thought in my mind, problems about getting vehicles there and parking. I guess the next thing I'd like you to notice as we're walking along is that these bushes to either side of the track are simply tea. This is a tea growing country, and we're very much in the high altitude tea growing area. Now here's the landowner together with Sharith and myself, and we're having a look at what is a totally beautiful location, there's no doubt about it. So there's a huge plus about this location, which is just look at that view. That's absolutely extraordinary. It's beautiful, it's unspoilt, and it's just far enough outside El to be relatively quiet, so it seems to have everything in its favour in that sense, until you start to look at the detail. And what I realised when I started to look at the detail is that the slope is very, very steep. It's actually so steep on the piece of land that we were looking at. There it is, it's over 45 degrees, steep enough to have to be really careful with your footing at all times. And it was my job patiently to explain to Charlotte, although this is a lovely location in so many ways, it just wouldn't work in terms of building. I mean, you could do it, but it would take a huge amount of money to be able to build in that way. And then he did let slip that more than 45 degrees is actually a sign from Sri Lankan planning authorities that the slope is too steep to be able to do any building on. So after having spent a good hour looking around this site, our eventual conclusion is definitely not. But I was very grateful to have the chance to look at it. Coconut opportunity on the way back, of course. Politics, just a few weeks before the national elections, that's why I thought I'd show you that. And people did explain to me that the atmosphere in Sri Lanka actually was much more tense than it normally is because of the significance of these elections coming up so soon. And then a couple of people carrying the essentials with a tea as their background. And this plant here drew considerable interest from Charith and myself, because we were trying to ascertain whether it's an acacia plant, because acacia is one of the plant medicines which is made use of in Nature's Medicines Retreat. So we were already looking at the possibility, could there be acacia growing wild in this country? Another shot of the tea just to show how it grows. And it was now time to walk back from this piece of land and to find ourselves back at the place where we started from, which was a rather strange little place, just a cafe, and their speciality is they have birds and animals in cages for children to look at and be interested by. Very fancy coconut done with little wings for me there, and there's this owl stuck in this cage at phenomenal temperatures. Seemed anything other than a good idea to me personally, but there you have it. And while I was there, we also looked at some of the polytunnels lower down, and this was a new build. We were looking to see the way they had actually constructed this using the very modern techniques. And there is a solar water heater, very cheap to get hold of and very easy to get your own solar hot water out there. And this was another look at another plot of land. This was also unsuitable, so that was actually plot number 3, also ruled out. So now here we are on our journey to the 4th plot of land that we were coming to look at. So far this is the 3rd one in the Ella area, and we've driven a good 15 minutes in the car through the very snaky windy roads. Again, an extraordinary view, tea plantation area, very beautiful, very unspoilt, far enough away from Ella to be beautifully quiet and just to hear the sounds of nature. There's Deepal in our car that is driving us around, and here's our first sight of the building itself. So this is 2 acres of land together with an existing building, which we'll get to see in a bit more detail in a moment.
It's around 80,000 pounds, 75 to 80. I think it's a pretty...
And this is 2 acres. Now, walking around on these 2 acres of land, and there is a plant which is highly interesting. That's the acacia analogue. So it looks like actually on the site there is plant spirit medicine. That's really quite remarkable. And here's the building itself, just to give you a bit of an idea of it. It's quite a decent size. It's obviously derelict, but it's walking around the land that was a big surprise to me. I was very regrettably wearing my nice hot weather trousers, And I found after I finished that walk I was in agonising pain from my ankles all the way up to my thighs. I had no idea why. And in the end, when I stopped to look, I realised my trousers were covered with these tiny little brown needles which were actually sticking into the trousers and sticking into my flesh, and it took me a good half hour to pull them all out. And I had to wait for that because we were straight in the car off to the next drive. And this was our last look at a piece of land. It was an extraordinary experience because what we had to do was drive off the main road and drive down a road which became narrower and narrower and more rutted, until I started to feel very sorry indeed for Deepal, our driver, because he was presented with a really awful situation, and the track just got worse, and in the end a part of the car actually started to be detached because it got stuck onto something underneath the road, and we had to stop and get out, and we had lots of shenanigans trying to get the car off the rough stone and get it into a position it could be moved. And then we had the same problem a few yards further down, and when I rushed up to help push the car, I was battered away by some other people who insisted on doing it for me in the car. Was eventually coaxed and encouraged back up to the main road, and we were all quite convinced that we did not want to see that piece of land. That journey was far too unfavourable. So here's a night walk off the Chill Cafe, and just noticing the various different shops on the way. Now it's very deceptive because the footage gives you the feeling that that is a really nice road to walk, and actually isn't. It's a very rough path full of stones and rocks, and very difficult to walk down indeed. And there is something about this place which does fit Shazia's word, harshness. There's something about the climate, there's something about the atmosphere, and there's something about the fact that this has been turned into a place where it is fundamentally catering for foreign tourists. And its subject is very close to my heart, and it's a reason why I've not been to certain countries, because I've actually watched what I will call cultural contamination. So in a sense, Ella is the perfect example of quite advanced cultural contamination in Sri Lanka, because the whole economy is being skewed towards satisfying the needs of the tourists who come through, and that is possibly where we come in. And I've been invited out to the Chill Cafe tonight to do some tarot readings, specifically for a couple of friends of Charith's. He had a tarot reading from me previously and was so taken by it, he thought his friends would find it very useful. And so we spent a good hour working through the tarot with them, and it was a totally extraordinary experience for me, because it gave me an idea. It's like when you sit around as a tourist with a group of people, you don't necessarily know who these people are, what their lives are like, but being in this incredibly privileged position that I was being taken around by Charith, I got to find out about the people I was doing the work for. So one of the guys is a filmmaker and film editor, and he works closely with Charith on their filming business that they have together. And the other guy is just completely extraordinary. It turns out he's a businessman, and he reeled off the list of about 6 independent business projects he was involved in, one of which included Charith as his friend. And then he's also a politician, and his father is also quite high up in politics, and he even went on to mention some more things he was involved in. And my first shock was to realise, my goodness me, this young man is in very early 20s, and he's already holding such a level of responsibility that many of us would balk at. And we continued to talk, and he told me a little bit about his life, and he mentioned that when he was 12, coming up for 13, he was taken by his father to England because his father had to address a Commonwealth conference, Sri Lanka being in the Commonwealth. And he also then mentioned that he was taken by his dad to Buckingham Palace and he had tea with the Queen. And I said, well, what's the Queen like? I'm thinking, golden opportunity. I've never spoken to anyone in my life who's had tea with the Queen, and here I am in Sri Lanka and this is my first opportunity. She was very polite and solicitous of me and my needs to make sure I had enough to eat and enough to drink. And he's quite a big guy, so I thought I'm sure he would really have appreciated that. So I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to give my small contribution in terms of the tarot. And what was significant for both these guys is that many times I would say something and say that's exactly what we've been telling you to do earlier. And what I sense from these people is they have very close friendships, and they really do act like each other's confidants and counsellors, and they're very forward in giving advice to each other about what they think it should do in life, which is just really gratifying to hear.
yourself, find yourself, free yourself.